I'm kind of just curious about your relationship with Mystery Science Theater, because obviously I know you started around 2016, 2017, but the show's been around for so, so long. When, at like kind of what age did you kind of start watching it, get involved?
When I started watching it is when it was like Comedy Central wasn't available where I grew up. I grew up in Hawaii, and like it's like we just started getting more and more cable channels. I remember like when MTV finally showed up, and then Comedy Central showed up. And I remember I loved Comedy Central because they showed like comedy stuff, the old episodes of SNL, like all this like stuff that I always wanted to watch. And then I remember tuning in once and just seeing like a black and white movie and going like,
Mhm.
oh, they're playing old movies like every other channel. Like, and then I heard the voices and I saw the silhouettes. I was like, what is going on? I thought it was like two channels on top of each other, maybe.
Mhm.
And then it went straight into a sketch, like a little desk piece. And I remember like immediately recognizing Joel Hodgson as a guy like from old episodes of SNL and Letterman reruns and clips and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, it's that prop com. And so like I immediately like it became obsessed with it because at that same time I was getting into like weirdo comedy and I was also getting to watching old sci-fi and horror movies and like it's like and I was starting to do like puppet stuff for my cousin's birthday parties and
Sure.
and so it was like it all kind of like collided to become like one of my favorite things.
Oh, sure, sure. And I'm sure it must have been so great to get the news that you're going to be on the show and everything and the new host. It's mind-blowing, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean that's something still I don't know how much I've ever really processed it because of how insane it feels, how it just seems so outside of any kind of reality that
Mm,
I would have ever expected in my life. Like I've had a very charmed life in comedy and I've gotten to do a lot of stuff that's like, like things that I liked growing up. Like, I got to do a stand-up show with Kumail, like Nanjiani on Comedy Central. I was like, oh, that's like the shows I used to watch, or I got to do this other thing where I was like, oh, this is like what I got. It's like I got to do a lot of things like the things I liked. But then
mhm.
when Joel asked me to host, like the new version, I was like, oh, I'm literally getting to this is a one-to-one thing. This isn't like Mystery Science Theater. It is Mystery Science Theater and it's still pretty mind blowing. Where I kind of go like, oh, did I get into Mystery Science Theater for the sole reason that I somehow knew I was going to be in Mystery Science Theater? Time is a flat circle. I don't know.
It all worked out in the end. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
It's really mind blowing, and I don't ever diminish it in my head for a second.
sure, sure, definitely. What's kind of the response looked like since you've been a part of the show? Because it's been 7, 8 years now, probably. Has
Yeah,
I'm assuming they like you because they brought you back for more seasons and everything. But
yeah. I mean, they like it's the people who make the show like me, of course. I knew when I was announced it was going to be somewhat tricky because it's like historically a new host on MST has never really gone over too smoothly. Went from Joel to Mike, of course, and I was ready for that as well. Um, but what's wild is that like people seem to like it and seem to like me, but like the wild thing is it's like it didn't feel like it moved the needle much in my like everyday life. But now since it's been on so long, now like I'll be out at like a restaurant or a bar or going to see a band or something like that, and people will come up to me now and they'll be like, "Oh, when I was in middle school," like because like now they're adults because now enough time has passed, and like now they're like,
right.
"Oh, my parents used to show me your episodes all the time. You were my first host, or this, or are you the guy from Mr. Stein?" So you're like, and like it's weird the delay that happens because of just like you realize so much of this. It's like I'm not running into like children while like the show's going on, but like now that they're older, like they go, oh, I used to watch it all the time, which is makes me feel ancient, but makes me feel good.
Sure. As it does. I'm sure
Yeah,
it
yeah.
on Netflix helps though. It's so easily accessible and anyone
It's
can
just
watch
there.
it. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I love that aspect that it's just kind of like it always there for people to rewatch or explore or like people go like it's like oh I liked it and now I'm showing my kids and there's that generational aspect to it.
Sure. No, totally. Totally. So I know we have the Turkey Day event coming up. It's coming back again this year, and I know that's always been really popular. And you're involved with hosting this year. I just got a list, I think yesterday, of all the people who are going to be involved, and a lot of really cool names. Matthew Lillard, Mike Flanagan,
Yeah,
It's really exciting. What are you kind of excited for with this year's event?
I mean, it's like it's funny because I feel that Mystery Science Theater has always kind of been like a very like its own little niche, its own little culture,
Hmm.
and it's I think it's going to be fun for everybody to see these people that like they've known for a long time within the culture, like that's that where they actually like the show and they want to like talk about their favorite episodes. And another fun aspect is like because I just had like a personal like connection to all of the people that were doing it, so it's like I thought that was a nice little aspect of the like having it be a Turkey Day thing, which is about friends and family getting together to celebrate, like being together. It's so it's like I like that I was able to kind of like show like, oh, these are just people, even though they've done these things, they're just like friends, and they also are fans of the show, and we all can be nerdy and enjoy the show. So it's I think that's going to be a really fun thing for people to see. I mean I always used to love that anytime I read it, like an interview of an actor or a band, I was like, I would love when they would talk about other actors or other bands because I could go, oh, if I want to see what they like, I want to see what if we have similar tastes. If Mike Flanagan, his pick for an episode is like a one I would pick, or Matthew Lillard or Kumail Nanjiani, so it's like I'm very excited.
No, totally. That's one of the great things I've always loved about the show too, is on the surface it seems kind of niche nerdy, but then the more you talk to people, especially in this business, it seems like everyone's kind of a fan. Everyone has experiences watching it growing up and loves it. So it's cool to
Yeah.
see how many people respond to it so strongly.
Yeah. It's like, and sometimes I'm still surprised where it's like when like I had worked with Matthew Lillard a couple times, and like it wasn't like till like recently where he's like, "Oh yeah, I gotta say, I really liked Mr. Science Theater." I was like, "Oh, you watched these?" He's like, "I love that show." I was like, "Why didn't you bring it up? I would have been less nervous meeting you."
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So I know there was a crowdfunding effort for another season that didn't quite make it back in, I think, 2023.
Mhm.
Um, it's been a year, so I'm just wondering, has there been conversations about doing more Mystery Science Theater or
There's always something bubbling. There's always like there's always conversations. There's always something kind of being worked out. And it's it's like the show has gone away and come back so many times that it's kind of it would be ever so hard to say it like anything's gonna be a comeback because it's like I think MST3K is inevitable, and it always will be.
sure. No, it's
Yeah,
cross my fingers. I'm waiting for the next one and I'll
yeah,
be
yeah,
there at all.
yeah. They're still making bad movies, so
Yeah, no, exactly. Kind of leads into what I was going to ask you next is how much does being a part of Mystery Science Theater affect just your brain when watching movies? Is it hard just to put one on normally, or are you always just thinking about commentary in the back of your
you
head, or
know,
what would you tell?
yeah. It's sometimes it's like it's become compulsive behavior where it's like it just comes out of me sometimes because but luckily I have somewhere to channel it. My friend Doug Benson, he does like a movie interruption show like once a month at a theater in Los Angeles at the Dynasty Typewriter, and so it's like I can kind of like hold it in and then we can go and watch a movie there and I'll just like get it all out of my system, but it is always kind of there. And I find myself now seeing all the gaffes in movies. I was rewatching Princess Bride the other day, and I was like, oh, there's a boom shadow in this scene. Like, I started to, like, my eagle eye is now like picking apart my favorite movies.
Mhm.
And there's nothing making a movie is hard. I made a movie like, that came out this year. It's like, they're very hard things to do. The fact that it gets made is a miracle. The fact that it's watchable is like, beyond anything. So it's not like we're like tearing it apart, but it is like hard to kind of just go, he had his pencil in the other hand, dumb stuff like that.
Sure, no, I'm sure, but it's probably still kind of fun, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you would have to ask the people around me if it's anything that's
Yeah, that's
yeah.
fair. I'm curious. I'm sure you probably get asked about what the worst movie you had to watch for the show is all the time. I'm curious if there's any you actually like genuinely enjoy. I don't know if you go back and rewatch any that you had to do for the show, but are there any that come to mind that are like, that wasn't too bad? Because I'll be
Yeah,
honest. I don't hate Killer Fish. I kind of liked that movie.
Yeah, Killer Fish is fun. It trots along really nicely. It's like it's not like the worst movie by far. I think I was really blown away by The Mask, which was our like Halloween episode. Like I was like we were watching it going like sometimes we'd be in the writers room like kind of watching it, we're like this is good. This is a good movie. It's like really well acted. It's a incredibly shot. It's like really like the 3D sequences of course are really silly, but like it's like a really well done movie about addiction, and like and I like it's like I was like I went and watched it afterwards, and I was just like it's like this is a quality film. This is a very quality film. Yeah. And there's some movies that like I'm so glad I'll never have to see again, like Mac and Me, or what was that other one? Munchie is another one that I just
I was
absolutely despise.
I was rewatching the one Christmas one last night, and whew,
Oh, Christmas Dragon or Christmas almost wasn't.
that Christmas that almost wasn't.
Yeah, that one's interesting too because it's like it's all about like land ownership, and it turns into a courtroom drama, and it's like it's like
They
you're like
randomly start playing with toys for 20 minutes.
yeah, and then also like I think one of the more interesting concepts of that one too is that like oh yeah, Santa's never dealt with children who are alive, and it's like and so he only knows them when they're asleep,
Mhm.
and like and he has to deal with it, and then it's like also about the birth of the mall Santa, all from this weirdo Italian movie about
Yep.
Santa losing the deed to the North Pole.
Yeah. It's a
Like,
weird
dude, own, don't lease.
one. It's a weird one. It's a weird one.
Yeah.
I've always kind of wondered this, but how many times do you have to like watch a movie whenever you're doing it? Like, how many times did you have to watch that Christmas that almost wasn't before you actually in there recording?
Yeah, that's a common question, and like it's something I always thought too when I was wondering. But like it's kind of hard to say because you kind of like every day you have like about 10 minutes of the movie, 10, 11 minutes of the movie you got to get through, and so certain parts of the movie you watch a lot of times because you're trying to figure out where the joke should be. Other times you kind of like there's not much you could do, so you kind of trot through and you're like, well, that's the joke for that part. There's this thing. There's too much talking to move anything in. And so it's like it's hard to say. Some parts you'll watch like 100 times, other parts you might watch like 20 times. But overall, you're not really sure how much you watch the entire thing
Yeah,
because it's all about like you kind of like you have to put these blinders on because if you get too like eagle eye view of the job, like you're like you get overwhelmed. You're like it's like we're never gonna make it. We're never gonna make it through this movie with how many jokes we have to write. So you kind of just go, well, what's in this 5 minutes? What's in this 5 minutes, and so on.
yeah, sure. And I'm sure that's hard work. I mean, I know people probably just go like, "Ah, you're just watching movies the whole time," but like to watch and rewatch something, especially when it's bad like this, so much over and over, I'm sure that kind of takes it out of you.
It's brain melting. And it's like, and all the writers will always have a ton of jokes or like the perfect moment. But then there's these other moments where it's like, a 2 minute long fight sequence or chase sequence. And you go like, well, like no one has that many jokes. So you have to that's when the real work happens. You're like, well, what are we going to talk about here? We can't just have a bunch of jokes. We have to kind of have it be a conversation, or do we start singing a song, or do we start doing like, and it is just like, any kind of comedy writing where it's like, you're like, well, what's the premise here? How are we going to tackle this moment? What's the scene? What's the sketch?
Sure, sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure it all turns out in the end. I love all of it. The songs, everything. So
Yeah. It's like because of the aspect of the thing too, where it's like the movie keeps on going, the train keeps on moving along. So it's like if a joke is just kind of so or a dud, you just kind of go, well, it doesn't matter, the movie's still moving. It's not going to stop and go, all right, that was bad, let's stop. Yeah,
sure. There's always another joke coming like 30 seconds later. So
exactly. Yeah.
always works. Something else I've always wondered is kind of going back to the fan responses is despite it being in the theme song, do you ever get people asking you about how you eat and breathe up there?
Yes, yeah, and like I remember at a certain point, like someone was mad at me because it's like they're like, "How do you eat and breathe up there?" And I was just like, and I just kind of was like, "You should really just relax," and like just kind of as a way to kind of like I was like, they knew the line, and they're like, "Okay, man, I was just trying to ask a question about the show." And I was like, "Oh no, I thought we were having a fun rapport of two friends that were fans of the show," but yeah, it's like I like to think though, with all the stuff that in the satellite I love, that I have a little, like hydroponics, like garden thing where I have like little tomatoes and stuff like that. Or it's almost I have what I would have is from the Big Top Peewee. where I have that plant that grows hot dogs. So
Sure.
that's probably what I have. That's how I eat. How I breathe, I don't know. I think maybe Tom Servo's dome is an air oxygen multiplier.
There you go. You have a whole
It's
explanation.
canon. Put it in. It's canon now.
I love it.